Hi guys, welcome back to the Stephen Sulley study. We're here with Mimboso, the wellness company, capturing all the footage yet again. I'm going to try and say this right. We're here at the English Institute of Sports in Sheffield. My next guest, who I've been chasing for some time, is a very, very busy guy, is Richie Woodhall, ex-world champion, had some classic fights. And also something which most people wouldn't know, you was a body double for Brad Pitt in a film.
Yeah, in Snatch, just for one scene, right at the end of the film when he gets sort of knocked out and he falls back through, and there's a scene where he's actually falling through water. He's looking back up at himself, and two guys are fighting away, and one of them was me. So
quality.
Yeah, it's a nice chat-up line, but it would have been, but I've been married for 20 odd years, so forget that one.
If I was even like, I don't know, even a T-boy for Brad Pitt, I would definitely use it to my advantage. But we can talk definitely about that side of your life shortly. I want to talk about, so I'll give you a bit of background about my podcast. It's twofold really. One, as I mentioned, I'm a co-founder to Mimboso, it's a wellness company, and this is an extension of that. So I like to speak to anyone which is affiliated with wellness. That could be sport, that could be nutrition, that could be mindset, business, it could be anything kind of like, which is bettering yourself as an individual.
Yeah.
I think the main core reason why I started this low is because when I was younger, I wasn't too clever at school. I didn't have any good grades, I couldn't really concentrate, and I found it very, very difficult to understand which path I was going to take.
Yeah.
Now, if there was back then podcast, it would have given me some kind of direction and some kind of inspiration and education. So why I'm doing this is I want to educate maybe the younger demographic to say, hey, even if you didn't get good grades, you can listen to someone's journey and get a bit of inspiration and knowledge from them.
Yes.
So that's why I'm trying to contact and interview many different people, sports people, business people, artists, you name it, to educate people and just to give them a bit of inspiration. And I felt that your attitude towards boxing, your attitude towards life, what you've achieved, I get inspired by it.
Yeah.
So I wanted to, for those who kind of maybe don't know your background, Richie, where did you first start in regards to like taking that leap into boxing? How'd you get into it?
Yeah, I think it's a very common story really. Brought up on a council estate in Telford in Shropshire. And my family are actually probably a typical overspill family from Birmingham. My dad is from the West Brom area. And I wasn't actually born in Telford, but I was born just to the side of Birmingham. My dad was a bricklayer. The new town of Telford was being developed in the late 1960s, and my father and my family moved out there to Telford. I was only 2 years of age, and basically the new town of Telford, it was a haven for him because he was a bricklayer, and so there was plenty of work. And then we settled there in Telford. I've lived there now for 49 years, so I'm a Telford bloke through and through. Brought up on a council estate, nothing to do on the estate back then in the 70s, apart from one community centre. My dad had boxed as an amateur, and there was a boxing club already there. A few people were members, didn't have very many members, and my dad went along because my eldest brother went to box. And I was only 7 years of age, and I just went along. I've got two big brothers, and I just went along with my brothers. And I never looked back. I've been in boxing all my life, I think since I was a 7-year-old boy. And it just snowballed really, and because I got good at it. I think 15, 16 years of age is always a time, it's a critical time in any sportsman or sportswoman's life, because you start experiencing girls, beer, if you like. At that age, you start having your first drink, whatever, whereas a lot of sportsmen and women probably then go off the rails and sort of deviate from their sport and go into a different side of their life. Whereas me, I just forgot all that and just carried on with my boxing. So I certainly wasn't a drinker, and I then used to set myself goals. So at that age, then I wanted to box for England, and at the age of 18, then I boxed for England for the first time. I then set a goal of boxing in the Olympic Games, which I went to in '88 as a 20-year-old, won a bronze medal. in the back of my mind was always professional boxing. I wanted to be a pro at some stage because I wanted to be, my all-time hero was probably Muhammad Ali as a kid.
Right.
And I wanted to be like Ali. I wanted to be a world champion, and at the right time then, I turned pro at the right time and then eventually got there. But I think it's because at the age of 16, 17, that's the critical time in a sportsman or woman's life, I think. And I stuck on the straight and narrow and just stuck to my game and worked very, very hard and achieved my goals. But a bit like yourself at school, I wasn't the brightest, I wasn't the most stupid in my school, but I didn't leave school with any real qualifications, a few CSEs back then I think it was, and I didn't get any O-levels at all because I was just very sports minded. All my efforts went into sport and I wasn't really interested. I got bored at school. Although I liked school I got a lot of mates that I still keep in contact now from school, a lot of friends, and I did enjoy school for that aspect of it, but as regards to the subjects and that, it bored me really, and I wasn't very good at school, so it was always sport for me.
What you just said about coming from like a council estate, there's so many people I've interviewed, business people, sports people, where they've come from, let's say, I wouldn't say nothing, but like, you know, come from a council estate, or they come from some sort of deprived background sometimes, and they turn into like the best version of them when they focus and channel their energy. Yeah. And sometimes when you're, let's say, from that kind of background, my mum and dad are from that background, and I was middle class, it gives you that grit of determination. Yeah. How important do you think that is, like to have that personality with boxing?
I think it's extremely important to have a goal and a focus, and obviously that's why role models are very, very important in life. You have to have role models, and that's when you achieve things in sport and in life in general, you have to put back. You have to then try and inspire the next generation, because you have to then think of kids on council estates all over the country and what they do and what they're looking up to, especially now. Drugs is a massive part of life now, you know, whether you like it or not. Drugs is massive, whereas when I was a kid in the 70s, drugs were probably there, but it wasn't such a big thing. But now there's so many so many attractions in drugs these days, and kids then just are easily led astray. So that's why, as a role model, you have to put back. You've got to. If you've achieved things, it's your duty. It's your duty to put back into your sport and to put back into community to inspire the next generation. Because if you don't, then the future's not bright for us. We have to inspire our kids. So answering your question, growing up then, I was looking to fighters like Marvin Hagley, who was a big hero of mine, and Muhammad Ali. You know, they were very dedicated sportsmen, professional boxers that I really looked up to, and they inspired me, and they made me box. So I know now that I'm not such a big name, but back in my hometown I am quite a name in Telford, and I do inspire kids, and that's why I'm the president of a local amateur boxing academy, Wellington Amateur Boxing Academy, and I like to inspire kids, and we've got like 60 or 70 members in our club, and most of them are under the age of probably 15 or 16, and it inspires me then to inspire them. I take them on the pads, I teach them a few things here and there. It's really important, mate, it really is, and that's what I like doing these days. Yeah,
I had a conversation with someone actually more so about alcohol, but then alcohol, in my opinion, is a gateway to drugs. Yeah. And then the gateway to crime, and especially knife crime in London, where I'm from, is probably stemmed from drugs. So the gateway is like a catalyst. Yeah, yeah. And I feel, what I said off camera, part of my personal goal in the future is to bring boxing back, even to a small element of it, back into schools, because one, it gives you the discipline, gives you the methodical calmness, because I know firsthand that when someone puts it on you outside of a boxing ring, you're a bit more calm. It doesn't really bother you.
That's right.
And I feel that would certainly suppress some of the problems out there. Yeah. So would you say, like, boxing coming back into school, or even just to be taught it, do you think would create a culture where people would have a lot more respect for each other?
Without a shadow of a doubt, you've hit it bang on the head, really. In that, what people don't realise about boxing is boxing teaches youngsters and teaches people to control their emotions.
Because people have this misconception that boxers, UFC fighters, they're violent. And violence is part of it, but it's controlled. It's more about the mindset and the emotional control that you have.
Yeah, because most good fighters can control their aggression. And so they're put in situations where their character is tested. Okay, and their emotions are tested, and they have to stay in control. So it's controlled aggression. Now, you could bring boxing back into schools where they didn't even have to hit each other. It can be a bit like tag, where you're touching shoulders and things like that. But it's the discipline that comes with boxing, and the camaraderie as well, and the respect that it teaches youngsters. It's absolutely essential. It would especially in your inner city areas of Birmingham and London especially, where there's a problem with knife crime, boxing would be a major asset to a school curriculum, no question. And it's proven that the boxing academy that I'm the president of, in our town where the school is, Wellington Boxing Academy, the police tell us that crime has gone down in the area since our boxing club has started.
It's incredible.
Because there's 60 or 70 kids in our club that would be on the streets at night, and after they've trained, they don't go back on the streets. They go home, get a nice meal in them, and they go to bed because they spent all the energy in the boxing gym. So it would be, to control emotions, it is the #1 sport, in my opinion, that can control aggression and control emotions. But people don't get it. Politicians don't get it because they've never sampled it. But people like me and you, who are from the street, we know what we're talking about, and that's why it should be brought back.
Yeah. I said to you as well off camera that I believe boxing is a transferable mindset and skill set. Now, it doesn't mean that later in life you're going to do something with your hands, but for me, I got into sales, and then I got into business for myself. And I can tell you this, had it not been for boxing, because I didn't have qualifications, I never went to university, I didn't have a rich background where they could pump a load of money into my future, I had to make it myself. And I'm still on that journey. I've done okay for myself, but I'm still on that journey, still learning. But the core, I would pull it down to boxing because it gave me confidence. And it allowed me to keep my emotions and mindset intact, and especially with sales. Sales and boxing, I cannot tell you how similar they are.
Really?
So I always hear boxing coaches say, you can look good on the pads, you can look good at training, but if you haven't put the work outside of the gym, which is your nutrition, your rest, and your road running and things like that, you're going to get found out in the ring.
In the ring,
And with sales, it's the same. If you're not homing in on your education, learning your presentation, learning your products, learning how to communicate, the moment that the end of the month comes when you're going to get paid your commission, the board never lies and you're going to get found out. And those two things, they're so similar. And I think it down to boxing, which allowed me to excel in sales and then into business.
It's knowing your job, isn't it?
It is, and having that confidence. So let's talk about your career a bit more specifically. I see in the background there, we've actually got a picture of you winning the bronze medal.
Bronze medal, yeah.
And that was in the 1988 Olympic Games. What was that like, just for 1 second, to represent your country? I mean, that must have been so fulfilling.
Yes, obviously. Right from a youngster, then I used to set myself goals in life, really. And like I said, one of my first goals was to box for England. Then my next goal then was to go to the Olympics. And I always probably wanted to go to the Olympics, but as I got into it as a teenager, then that thought process got more serious, and so that was a major goal that I set myself. So yeah, I got to the Olympic Games. There was 8 of us that went. I was the only medalist, which you have to have a little bit of luck here and there. And I always say that the harder you work, the luckier you get, and I think that's definitely for everything, never mind boxing. The harder you work, the luckier you get. And I used to train really, really hard. What happens in the Olympics? I get a bye the first round, so I don't box in the first round, I get a bye, a bit of luck. I then have 3 contests, which I win. That gets me into the semi-final position. I'm down to the last 4. I think there was about 48 in my category at the time. I get down to the last 4. Come up against the great Roy Jones, who wasn't really known at the time then. I get beat in the semis and win a bronze medal. But my dad always says that the Olympic bronze, he thinks, was my greatest achievement over my World Championship win as a pro. Because as a pro, there's four world titles, and I'd won one of them. There's always a world champion out there, and unless you're the undisputed champion, then there's always someone out there saying you're a world champion. Whereas the Olympics, I was a bronze medalist. So yeah, it was a great. But just to make the team back then, because there was none of this back then. You got the odd grant here and there if you're lucky. You had to get time off work. One of our members, I'll never forget it, Henry Akinwande was our heavyweight, 91k, and he lost his dole money because he was unemployed. He lost his dole money because he was unavailable for work representing Great Britain at the Olympic Games, and he lost his dole.
That's madness.
Now, you know, thankfully, we have come on leaps and bounds since then. All the boxes here are funded. You know, it's a funded programme by the lottery, which is fantastic. UK Sport, we're really grateful for. But back then, I mean, it was dark ages, like I say. So to win any type of medal at Olympic Games back then was a major achievement.
And you didn't have things like the pressurised chamber and, you know, all these weights and, you know, all the different size rings. I mean,
it's incredible.
Boxers getting into it today, I mean, there's a lot of hard graft that has to go behind it, but you could almost take for granted this stuff, couldn't you?
Absolutely. So just to make the team back then was an achievement. To box as an Olympian was fantastic, but to medal then was a major achievement. But yeah, I mean, I often, that's why I think one of my roles here, I'm a consultant coach, and I talk to the squad on a daily basis. And I drum it into them all the time. I say, look, you're getting paid to try and get to the Olympic Games. I say, no, listen to what I'm saying, because you don't understand what that means. Someone of my era, they would know. You're getting paid to try and be an Olympian, to try and get there. Someone's paying you to actually try and get there.
It's an honour.
You know what I mean? And I always say, to be an Olympian, you have got to be prepared to do this sport for nothing. And I was prepared to do that. I went into several jobs when I left school, and it was always a job that accommodated my boxing. So I was a waiter when I first left school on a YTS, a government training scheme, and I had to go to my line manager one night, and I went, I can't come anymore. They went, what are you on about? I said, because you've got me down as working tonight. I should be in the gym. He went, this is your job though? I went, yeah, but I want to be a boxer. I want to box for England. I was only 16, I want to box for England. He went, mate, you've got to be in tonight. I said, I'm not going to be in tonight. And I walked out of the job, and I went and worked in a shop. So then I worked in a shop that wasn't tiring me out too much.
Shows your commitment.
Yeah, you've got to, because it's what you want in life. So there's always barriers that come up in life, little obstacles, and you've got to get over them if you want to get to your goal. And I kept getting over them every time, every obstacle that came up, I kept getting over it, because I had one goal in mind. I wanted to box for England, I wanted to go to the Olympic Games. So, but back then, that's what it was like. But I say, you've got to be prepared to do it for nothing, this sport, because it's not about this, it's about the glory and the desire to win and to be a champion. If you've got that burning inside you, you will get there. But there's many tests along the road, as a boxer, as an athlete, as a footballer, whatever. It's up to you. If you really want it in life, it's up to you to go and get it. But everything will come your way, and you've just got to get over them hurdles.
Yeah, I was watching, I've said this a couple of times on my podcast, I was watching years and years ago when David Hay was making that transition from what was the weight he was good at into heavyweight.
Oh, cruiserweight?
Cruiserweight to heavyweight.
Yeah.
And a reporter said to him, how much money do you want to make? And threw out some figures. And he said, I don't focus on the money. And he said, what do you mean? This is your career. And he said, I focus on being the very best I can be, and then the money will just come. And I think that's testament in life. I think if you want to become a business person, salesperson, a boxer, an athlete, a chef, an artist, if you focus on your craft and becoming the best version of you, you will attract money. I believe in law of attraction, but the only way you can attract things is becoming attractive because you have honed in on your skill. Yes. And I think that's such an important thing that people need to pick up on.
That's a great lesson, that is. And that, what you've just said there, again, you're absolutely spot on. And I try and tell boxers here, because there's a lot of money in boxing, in the right divisions and whatever. But I say to them, look, if you concentrate on the money, it's the wrong thing to concentrate on. You get nowhere. If you're thinking of the money as a pro, I say you won't get anywhere. And I always tell this story. When I became a world champion as a pro, I was managed by Frank Warren, who was a good manager and a very good promoter. If Frank Warren had come to me and said, Richie, I've got the world title fight against, I boxed a fellow called Sugar Boy Malinga for the championship of the world, okay, who I won, who I beat. Good champion as well. But if he'd have said to me, I've got you the title shot, but I can't pay you a penny, I'd have still bit his hand off. I'd have bit his hand off, because my dream, since a young kid, I was watching Muhammad Ali, I was watching him win the green WBC belt, the belt. And when I got my shot, it was against Sugar Boy Malinga, who was the WBC champion. And if Warren would have turned around to me, Frank, and says, I can't pay you nothing, I'd have still said, Frank, what time, where do you want me, mate?
Yeah.
Because my passion was to become a world champion, okay? And, you know, I've heard people say, Richie Woodhall, he wasn't that good, this, that and the other. I've heard people say that, and that don't bother me. It doesn't bother me. What people think of me is an opinion. What's actual fact and what's written down in history books and that is he won a bronze medal. He's WBC champion. Yeah. That's undisputed. You can't dispute that. What you think of me is an opinion, but what's written down, that's what I achieved, and that's what I honed in on. I was always going to be a world champion, Steve, right from a 7-year-old kid, because that's when the dream started, and I set myself goals, and the ultimate goal was to become a world champion. And I was always going to get there, because I wanted it. And only one person made it happen, that was me.
Yeah. And
like I say, everything that came in I had 2 operations on my elbow, 2 operations on my hand, I broke my hand, people said I was finished. I had a surgeon say to me, you've got to retire from boxing, because I lost the extension of my arm, because I lost cartilage on the elbow. And I went, nah, mate, I'm not having it.
Not happening.
Not happening. I'm not listening to you. That's something else that's knocked me back. And I always say, and I'm a very spiritual person, to be honest, but I always say, that was like the big man up there saying to me, do you really want to be a world champion, Richie Woodhall? These are all these problems you got. Do you want to be? He tested my character, and I said, yeah.
How badly did you want it?
How badly did you want it? And I was always going to be a world champion because I wanted it. It happened. It was meant to be.
I interviewed another Olympian. It was the first one on my podcast, a runner called Conrad Williams.
Conrad Williams, yeah, I've heard of him, yeah.
And funny enough, when I was talking to him about being in the Olympic village, and he saw, I think, Serena Williams and also Anthony Joshua, and he said it was just such a nice culture. Everyone wanted to win, everyone wanted to better themselves. Yeah. But he was saying that up until the Olympic Games in 2012, he had to kind of get in a mindset 3 years before, 2 years before, in order just to qualify. Yeah. So friends of his were going, why don't you come out? He said, I've got the 2012 Olympic Games in 2 years. I said, what do you mean 2 years? Why don't you come out now? He said, no, you've got to commit now, sacrifice now, in order just to qualify. Yeah. It's got to be the same with boxing.
Listen, I mean, my father passed away now. He was a great trainer. He was my hero. My dad was, as he is for many, fathers are for their sons. But my dad always said to me, Richie, son, he says, you'll make it in boxing, you will. And I said, why'd you say that, Dad? He says, because you don't go to nightclubs, you don't party with other people. He says, you're dedicated, son. He said, it's only the dedicated people that get there. And it's right, because I was brought up in a small town of Telford. Back in the 80s, there was one nightclub in Telford back then. It was a place called Cascades. It was in the Telford Town Centre, right? Cascades it was called. And all my mates, every week, used to go to Cascades. And they always used to either knock my door, or when they see me, coming to Cascades. I said, nah. I said, where are you going? I said, I'm going to the gym. And they say, you going to the gym on a Friday night? Are you mental? Yeah. I say, I've got to go to the gym. I've got to go to the gym, I wouldn't miss. And if you put me now, I always say, if you put me in the middle of that dance floor at Cascades, I wouldn't even know where I was, mate. I never went to Cascades, this nightclub in Telford, where everyone went and everyone met on a Friday night. I was in the gym. And I always say to people, it's who's in the gym on a Friday night, as you see, who's got a chance of making it in boxing. Because most gyms on a Friday night are empty. Only 2 or 3 people in some gyms, and they're the ones that you got to look at, because they're giving up. They're not going out with their mates. And in our gym on a Friday night, there was only 2 or 3 people, mate. There was always me with a couple of my mates who were diehards as well. But yeah, my dad always said to me, "You'll make it. You just got to keep on the straight and narrow and keep training hard." Because I wasn't that. I always think that I wasn't that good. I was tall, I was rangy. My dad was a very clever man in boxing. He says, you've got to use your height and reach. You're not the most powerful. He said, we've got to develop that. He said, well, you've got to use the tools that you got. God's given you tools. He says, you're tall, you're rangy. He said, that's what you've got to do. You've got to hit and move. I had very good balance. and I was very good ring awareness and a good boxing brain.
And the fights I've watched, you're very composed and you're very well balanced.
That's it. There you go. So that's what I had, and my dad drummed that into me about hitting and not getting hit. The art of boxing is to hit the opponent and not get hit, not stand there and have a slugfest. That's not boxing. The art is to hit and to move and to make him miss. That's the real art of boxing. And I did that okay, and I sort of maximised what I had, and that's what got me there, really. Yeah.
When you were saying about the Friday nights, I was boxing for Bromley and Downham. I had roughly about 10 amateur fights, and I was under Richard and Red Foster.
Yeah.
The first night of training was on Tuesday, packed. The second night was on a Thursday, which kind of turned into the new Friday night.
Yeah.
Back when I was younger, and it would be half, if not less.
It.
So you're exactly right. The people that really committed to their sport or to their path in life will do it no matter what.
No matter what.
Like with my sales company, or when I first started sales, they used to make us work on a bank holiday. And I used to say, why? They said, well, think about it. There's going to be more people in, so you can contact more people. But also, it's your mindset. If you really want to become a success, you'll work regardless what day it is. And I've always had that mindset. Yeah. I work on a Saturday. I can do a bit on Sunday, even though it's with the family. Bank holidays, it doesn't matter. I like to graft, and I think that transferable mindset is so important. Before we go from your, let's say, amateur career in the Olympics to pro, because I want to talk about that. I want to ask you about one person you just said, Roy Jones. Yeah. Obviously, he was a phenomenal fighter, moved up in weight class. What was his speed and power like?
He's probably the fastest amateur I ever met, and probably the best amateur boxer that I ever boxed was Roy Jones Jr. I had a bit of height and reach over him going into the semis. He wasn't that well known then, actually. I think I was 20 years of age. He was about 19, Roy. I think I'm a year older than him. And he was sort of new into the American squad. He blitzed everyone getting up to the semis. And then he against me, we'd done our homework on him. So my coach at the time was Kevin Hickey, the national coach, GB coach. And he said, look, with this fella, you can't go over your front foot. You can't make mistakes against him because he's got very, very fast hands. But he sets traps, Roy Jones did, all throughout his career. Very low hands. And that's the trap he's setting. So he sort of heads there, the target's there. You think, it's easy to hit, just go forward and hit it. And then as you go, he sets the trap, and then the punches come from different directions very, very fast. So it was difficult against him because what he does was he sets the trap, okay, as you come forward, then he'll catch you, and then as you get hit, you lose your rag a little bit more, and that's when you have to control the emotions that we spoke about earlier. Because if you lose your temper against Roy Jones and you come forward even more, you get too stiff, then he just absolutely boxes your head off. So the tactic for me was a bit of what he does, in and out, and trying to frustrate him and probably trying to get him to come forward, because he was predominantly a counter puncher. Okay, but like I say, with the traps that he sets, these hands then start coming around and honing in on the target, very fast hooks from this situation. And remember, your eye vision is here, and so the punches are coming low, and then they're coming around the target, whipping him in. Man, he was just electric. But he paid me a great compliment, actually, because after the contest, I didn't see Roy Jones then probably for the next 20 years.
Wow. Incredible.
Yeah, I think it was 2008 when I seen him again, and it was actually just before he fought Joe Calzaghe. So I'm in a press conference, because I was working for the BBC at the time, in Vegas, and it was it might have been a Ricky Hatton press conference. So Ricky Hatton might have been fighting over there then, or it might have been Joe Calzaghe. It might have been Joe Calzaghe against Bernard Hopkins, and if he beat Hopkins, then he would fight Roy Jones. So I'm in this press room. It's a great story, actually. I'm in this press room, and Roy Jones comes in, and all the press just go over to him. And I'm standing on my own. I'm drinking a cup of tea with a couple of the BBC guys. Big Ron McIntosh, who worked for the BBC. I'm working for 5 Live at the time. So I'm there, and all the crowd, all the press, just hone in on Roy Jones, and he's bored. I could just tell by looking at him, he just doesn't want to be there, but he's got to do the rounds. You know what I mean? Going through the motions. And so my boss at the time said to me, we want to try and get Roy Jones, he says, for 5 minutes for Radio 5 Live. And I went, right, okay. He went, will you go and ask him? I went, oh, do me a favour. I said, he won't even remember me. You know what I mean? I said, I can't just go through there and say who I am. He went, my boss went, please, Rich, will you just go through and ask? So he starts coming round to us, and I'm standing there with a cup of tea, and people started knocking me because they're starting to come towards us. So I thought, I may as well try because I've got to please my gaffer. So I put my drink down. I walked through and I went, excuse me, Roy. I tapped him on the thing. Excuse me, Roy. And he just looked at me, and he's looking through me. He doesn't know who I am. And I went, we boxed in the 88 Olympics, I says. Woodhall, GB. And he looked at me, and his eyes, and then he just really smiled.
Come to life.
Come to life and give me a hug. And he turned around to us, someone with, and all the press, they must have thought, who's this guy? And he went, you see this guy? He says, he was so difficult. That's what he said to me. So I had a bit of a chat with him, and he said to me, you were my hardest fight. He said, Olympic Games. He says, you was my hardest fight. And he turned to someone and says, this guy is my hardest fight in Olympic Games. Which I thought was great, because obviously amazing. He went on and got beat against Park Sun in the Korean in the final, but he was totally robbed. But he said, you was my most difficult fight. And he got beat in the final, he was robbed. So that for me, it just made, and I said, Roy, do you mind? I says, I'm working for BBC Radio. I says, and he went, sure, man. And he came over and he gave us like 10 or 15 minutes of his time. And then he went. It was great. And my boss tapped me on the shoulder. But it was great. But I didn't want to go up to him because I thought he won't even remember me because I hadn't seen him for 20 years. But yeah, he remembered me.
Quality.
Yeah, it was fantastic. It made my day actually. So yeah, it was good. It was good.
It's part of the reason why most people must get into this in sports or this sport, boxing, because of the great stories, and it defines kind of your life and your personality. So going into the pros, am I right in saying you had a bit of a run where you were unbeaten for like 20, 21 fights or something like that?
Yeah, 21-0 I was at the time.
Got to European level at that point?
Yeah, won the Commonwealth title, won the European title. I was managed by then, at the time, was by Mickey Duff, who was a great, God rest his soul, he was a great manager. Yeah, and Mickey then got me into a stage where I had to box for the European title against, and I'd probably had my hardest fight of my career, something in probably my 19th or my 18th fight when I won the European against a very good fighter called Silvio Branco from Italy, who later went on to become light heavyweight world champion. And it was just, I'd always, up to that stage, I'd been a good boxer in and out, and listened to my dad, and I hadn't really taken any risks. And to be fair, most of the opponents weren't at my standard of boxing, so I found it quite easy. But then I got to this European title stage, and I was up against this Italian who was just like me in terms of 6'1", and he was strong, mate, and he was good, and he really put it on me as well. And probably then I answered a few critics on that night because I had to stand and have a real scrap at times. Bit of a tear up here and there. Tried to keep to my boxing, but this guy was just like me. He was tall, rangy, similar style, and he wanted to win. And I just caught him in the 9th round, right at the start of the round. I catch him with a quick 1-2 bomb, and I just seen a little stagger in his demeanour, and then I just carry it on, and it just snowballed, and then bosh, I just gets him, and sort of, it's a TKO. But that was a great fight for me, probably my hardest fight of my career. And then I had a couple of defences, went to 21-0, and then I got my first world title shot.
Quality.
Yeah.
So the first, am I right in saying as well, your first title shot, it didn't go to plan?
No, it didn't, not at all.
You got stopped, didn't you?
Stopped in the 12th round against a fellow called Keith Holmes. I had to go to Washington, he was the world champion at the time. Very tall, 6'2", southpaw.
And was it quite intimidating going into someone's backyards, mate, you know, when you got all their supporters, and it's for a world title fight?
Mate, it was like a Rocky film, that fight was, because the whole situation going over there, it was, I mean, people have told me to write a book and this will be part of it if I ever do, but 3 weeks before, 2.5 weeks before the fight, I have an accident in the gym, so I throw out my right hand. My dad's got me on the pad, so I throw out this right hand, and I was hitting pretty hard at the time. Missed the pad completely, and I dislodged cartilage on the joint. So I was in agony basically. Went to hospital. I had to have an operation. I had to have this cartilage removed, and then my life really changed, I suppose, in many respects, because I had this operation, and coming round after the operation, within a few minutes of me like waking up, the surgeon's in the room, and I knew it was serious because he had 2 or 3 people with him, and he knew I was a fighter, this, that and the other. And he said to me, you've got to retire from boxing. He said, you've got to retire from boxing. You've lost cartilage on the joint. He says, and you're going to lose extension on your hand. He says, you'll never throw a right hand again.
I bet it was really
And I had a world title fight coming up, and so I literally it was very painful, but fighters are fighters. And at the time then I said to Mickey Duff, Mick, he knew the situation of me having this operation, and he said to me, if you don't fight this fight, it's going to take you 18 months again to get back up to the, because I was the number one challenger. It wasn't a voluntary defence, it was a mandatory. So I was undefeated, I was a threat to the champion, I'm number one, I've earned the right to fight for the title, I'm the mandatory challenger. And Mickey says, to get you back up there, he says, they'll put you straight back down the rankings. It's a Don King fighter, so we're up against it anyway. Take you 18 months to get back up there. And I just said, listen, I'm going through with the fight. So foolishly, I went through with the fight. 2 weeks went by, I recovered, sort of half recovered, and I still threw the punch in the fight. But I missed a bit of training, and I just ran out of gas. But I always say that boxers always think they're better than what they are. And I was no different. I thought I was invincible. I was 21-0, no one could beat me. And Keith Holmes, we'd worked out a plan how to beat him, and I was going to knock him out. I was going to do him, mate, no problem. Forget the arm, I'm just going to, mind over matter, I'm going to beat him. Didn't go that way. I was knackered from about round 6 onwards. I've never felt worse in a fight than that fight. And I knew I was just on borrowed time. It was just a matter of time before he'd suss me out, because I was knackered. And that's no way to fight, trying to survive. But I did still give a good account of myself, but it wasn't enough to win. 12th round, I was just gone, mate. And he knocked me out, I think, 28 seconds to go. I almost got to the end, but he does me in the last round. But before that fight, it was like a Rocky film, because I went to a press conference where I think there must have been people there that were planted, because they wouldn't let me talk. I was trying to get them. They were just really barraging me with loads of
dictating to you.
Oh, mate, it was awful. I thought, what the hell? It was just to disrupt me. I had people knocking on my door at 4 a.m, playing knock door run, mate, bang, 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 and what's going on here? Then we had to change rooms. I had to change rooms with my dad, and then I was having phone calls, and it was just
it's all mind games.
Yeah, it's all mind games, but I learned from it. I really learned from it, and it toughened me up. So when I get beaten, I get knocked out 12th round, I come back, and again, like I say, it's like him saying, do you want to be a champ? Yeah, I do. And I always said to my dad after, I said, Dad, I can go anywhere in the world now on my own if I want to, because I experienced so much there that, they'd lost my medical papers, so I had to have another medical. So I had to have a full eye test where they put something in your eye that makes your pupil bigger, and then all the bright lights and you can't look. I had to have all these tests, these medicals. Honestly, it was just chaotic, mate. All before the fight, this is.
This is all the shit that people don't see and
People
don't appreciate.
People don't see. They just see you get in the ring. So I had all that. But you know what? It was me who wanted to do it, and I still thought I'm going to knock this guy out. I'm going to win. I'm going to win this fight, no matter what. Put all your money on me. I'm going to win the fight. Because, like I say, fighters always think they're better than what they are. And I paid the ultimate price of not being 100%, although I still thought I could win. Gets done, but I learned from it, and it made me stronger as a person, as a character. That was meant to be before I experienced the ultimate of winning the title. That toughened me up big time, mate.
So the world title fight then, which, because you mentioned for the people that know boxing but not thoroughly, which title was it?
It was the WBC Super Middleweight title. Sugar Boy Malinga was the champion.
Because you moved up, didn't you?
I moved up, from middle to super middle.
And for the people, just to give a comparison, you in recent years, George Groves.
Grovesy, good fighter. Frotchy,
Andre Ward. Yeah. Those kind of, that's the kind of...
Yeah, and back in my day, then I was just after the likes of Nigel Benn, of Chris Eubank, and obviously Steve Collins, who were 3 great fighters. But it's all about eras, and I just came after them. That's the way it is. That's just timing, isn't it?
And what was your fight like when you won the world title?
Well, I like I say, once I'd had this operation on my arm, told to retire, no way, I'm carrying on. It's incredible because I always say where there's a will, there's a way. And so what happened was when I got beaten, I started getting back into the gym. moved up in weight. I went from 11.6 to 12 stone to super middle. I found that I couldn't punch, I still can't do it today, punch out straight. The pain, if I hit the target, I'm okay. It's if you miss, then you can't, cartilage just doesn't grow back.
It's like the tennis elbow.
Tennis elbow, mate. It's horrible. Just hyperextension of your, you know what I mean? So
I've had it a few times.
So I couldn't punch, but amazingly, what we found was I could hook. So when the arm's bent, I can uppercut and I can hook. I just couldn't go straight, okay? But at World Championship level, so what I had to do is I had to change my style a little bit. I was always an out-and-out boxer. My old man drummed it into me, use the tools you got. Range, box at range, long 1-2, long jab, big gap between you and him, hit him, you don't get hit. Centre of the ring, use the ring space, we win fights. That was what drummed into me since I was a kid. Now, different. Because I can still use the lead hand, that's the point scorer. But you know yourself, being a boxer, you've got to have a bit of power. And to be a world champion, you've got to have a bit of power behind you. If they suss that you've only got a left hand, they just walk through you.
Walk through
Walk through. Okay, so my 1-2 was always my strength, my good straight right hand. Now I couldn't throw it. Now I had to throw that. Yeah. But to throw that, you've got to be closer. It's a bent arm shot.
Yeah.
Okay, I could now not afford to keep that gap. I had to get close to land that shot. At World Championship level, I try and explain to people, if you're 6 to 8 inches closer to the target than what you should be, at World Championship level, your head's taken off your shoulders, mate. If you're fighting people like Joe Calzaghe, for instance, you know, you're too close. So now what I had to do was just work with the jab, fast feet in, throw that hook, move out of range. And that's what we perfected, because what we found against Sugar Boy Malinga, what we studied about him was, he got slow feet. So that was to my advantage. I had quick feet in and out. If he's got slow feet, he wanted you to come to him, Sugar Boy Malinga did, have a bit of a tear up with him. He was a good boxer himself, but preferred boxers to come to him and hold their feet with him and trade, and that's how he'd win fights.
Stay in the pocket.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? But he was a tough kid. But he was aging, he was late 30s. He'd just beaten Robin Reed for the title. He was a good fighter and a good friend of mine, Robin. And 2 years before he beat Robin, beat Nigel Benn at the end of Nigel Benn's career. So Malinga's getting on a bit now, late 30s. I get the ultimate phone call from Frank Warren. I'd boxed for Frank Warren. I'd changed managers for Mickey. My contract ran out with Mickey Duff. Joined Frank Warren. I had one fight with him at this new weight. I knocked an American out in the second round in a fight. Get a call from Warren saying, Richie, you know, I've got a voluntary defence. Malinga's just beat Reed. I've got an option on Malinga. I'm giving you, do you want the title shot?
Of course.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let me check my diary, Frank. You know what I mean? I said, Frank, yeah, I'd love to. I'd love the shot at the title. Yeah. He says, you're about. I think I was ranked about number 9 in the WBC ratings at the time. But because I'd been number 1 as a middleweight, mandatory, I'd moved up in weight to super middle, and I was around number 9 in the ratings. They choose from around the top 10 as a voluntary defence. Malinga, yeah, I'll fight Woodhall. He's just coming up. He's a pumped up middleweight. That's what he must have thought. And I took the fight, did our homework. My dad says, right, this kid holds his feet. You've got to use now your jab more than anything. This fast right hook of yours, he says, and then move you in and out all the time. And my dad was clever. He says, Malinga will target your body. He said, because he'll try and slow you down. Any good moving fighter, you go downstairs and slow the feet down. He says, so that's what he'll do. He says, we've got to toughen your body up. We had about 8 weeks to prepare. I trained, mate, like a mad dog for this fight. And, you know, I think it was the 27th of March 1998, Telford Ice Rink. And I always say that I wouldn't want to have won that title anywhere else. They say about Madison Square Garden, they say about Vegas, fantastic. I'd have loved to have boxed there, of course. But for my world title, Telford Ice Rink, my hometown, mate.
Yeah.
There was 4,000 people rammed into this ice rink. It was fantastic. It was the greatest night of my sporting life, especially.
Reminds me a bit like Tony Bellew.
Yeah, exactly. When Everton.
That's
it. You've got to win it on home soil.
You've got to nick it as well from someone.
You've got to win it with your people there.
It's like Hatton also as well.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Costa Zoo in Manchester. Yeah. It means more to fighters.
Yeah.
You know, it's great to box in New Vegas and Madison Square Garden, I should imagine, and I've been there, I've commentated many times. But to win the title in front of your home crowd, then is very, very special. And we just got the tactics spot on. And I remember that around the end of the 11th round, my dad because my dad wouldn't be my main corner man. You see, because he always said that you may question my judgment because I'm your dad. He says so. My dad was always behind. Denny Mancini was the late Denny Mancini was a great corner man. He was there, very calm corner. But my dad just whispered in my ear, so you got one more round. He said, he's going to come for you. You got one more round, Rich. He went, you're ahead. He said, stay off the ropes. He says, I think he said to me, just box at range where you can, in and out with your feet. Just keep it going. One more round. That's all he said. I said, yeah, right, Dad. And boom. And then at the end of it, I knew I'd won it. A fighter always knows when he's won. And I knew I'd won it. Yeah,
that's quality.
It was just the tactics were absolutely spot on. And he hurt me several times downstairs, but just you don't feel pain when you fight for the title, mate.
Yeah, you embrace it and then just carry on.
Just your will and desire. It's just that's the goal. That's your mission in life. It was my mission to be champion, to win a WBC belt.
Question I always ask athletes. I've asked this to footballers, more so them actually, but I want to ask you because. For me, when you winning your world title was going to be very similar to Anton Ferdinand when he got signed to West Ham, for example. Yeah. It's at these moments where, you're persevering in your career, which is great. There is a downside, which most people don't talk about, which is, this is going to sound like a bit of a weird downside.
I know where you're coming from.
It's a paradox, which is endorsements, you become more famous, and then money. Now, someone's going to probably listen to this and say, what do you mean the downside to money? Yeah. There is a downside because sometimes it can inflate the mindset, ego, and I know you're quite a composed, methodical man, but for some athletes, that is a big challenge and they can go off to the stratosphere and they think they're kind of God's gift. What was it like for you when you won it with those three components, but what is the advice that you would give to anyone as someone's climbing through their career and they're making a name for themselves? Yeah. How can they keep their feet firm on the ground?
That is, it's a fascinating subject because as a boxer and as a sports person, if you have a goal in life, which is you have an ultimate goal that you want to reach, man, nothing ever really can prepare you for when you actually reach it. And I never thought that I would think the way I thought at the time when I won the title, because when I'd become a world champion, I've never been one to celebrate, to be quite honest. I celebrate in my own way. And straight after the fight, and I'd won, all I wanted to do was go home. So everyone was going out partying, and my brothers said, come on, let's take you out. I went, I'm going home. And my one brother went, what? You just won, you're world champion. I said, Steve, I'm going home. Take me home. I want to go home. Because I was hurting inside anyway, because I was bashed up downstairs and I had stitches in my mouth, so I wasn't feeling too good. So all I wanted to do was go home. So I went home, and my wife never watched me box. She wouldn't come. And my kids were in bed. They were only very young. And it was a real surreal moment in a way, because I got home, and if I'd boxed anywhere and I could get home, I'd always want to get home. I didn't want to stay in hotels. I wanted to go home and be with my wife. So I got home, and I'll never forget, I walked in and she gave me a hug. She said, well done. She obviously knew the result.
Quality. Yeah.
And she said, do you want a cup of tea? I said, yeah, I'd love a cup of tea, flour. So I had a cup of tea with her. And thinking about it now, I get quite emotional now because I'd reached the mountain, I reached the top of the mountain to be WBC champion. On that night I was the champion of the world, my ultimate goal in life. And I remember drinking this tea and looking at my wife, and I looked at her and I literally said to her, I'll never forget this, I went, what am I going to win now? What am I going to win now? There was nothing left to win for me. And I know there's 4 other titles out there, and there's no disrespect to the WBA, IBF or WBO, because they're great titles and they've had great champions, better champions than me, I'll admit that. But that WBC belt it's probably the pinnacle of my career. It's the ultimate goal in a lot of fighters'
say this.
You know what I mean? And once I'd won it, I had nothing left to win. And a part of me in boxing died on that night because I was so deflated. I just didn't. And my missus, she said to me, she said, you got to think of the kids now, Rich. She says, you got to think of, we're in a few quid out of it now. That's what she says, think about the money side of it now and set us up. And I went, yeah, okay. But I was never the same. She was right, but I was never the same again. And that's why I always know that I was a true boxer, a true fighter, because I didn't do it for money. I did it because I had a burning desire to become champion of the world. And once I'd become champion of the world and I'd won that green belt, there was nothing left to win, and it wasn't about money, because I was never the same again after that. My first defence was against Glenn Catley. It was a good fighter, Glenn was, but really he shouldn't have given me the fight he did. I scraped past Glenn, and I didn't think I'd won it at the time, but I scraped past him. But to be honest, he shouldn't have been in a good contest with me, because I thought that I was better than him. But I nearly come unstuck that night because I took my eye off the ball. And against Glenn, he should have been champion that night, and I kept my title. I scraped through, but I never trained as hard. I never trained as hard again. And it wasn't long. I was on borrowed time. I had 2 defences which I won. I beat Vincenzo Nardiello after that, and then I eventually got beat against a good German fighter called Marcus Bayer. But I was never the same, and it was never about money. And money wasn't my motivation. The desire, the burning desire, went in me after I won the title. So there was a downside to it. And yeah, I earned a few quid, and you get sponsored here and there. But I was never the same again. And once I got beat, I then had one more fight after that. I think I boxed. I beat a kid. I beat a kid in Germany called Errol McDonald. He's an English lad, and I knew that I was coming to the end, because for the first time in my career, I felt sorry for my opponent. I was hitting him at will, and I thought, I know you shouldn't think like that as a fighter. You've got to just get rid of him, whoever it is, mate. You've got to be mean in there. And something just wasn't right with me. And then I had one more fight after that. I challenged Joe Calzaghe for the title. And again, I was up for it. I was going to beat him. I was going to knock Joe out. I was in my mind. But I was never the same. I never trained as hard again after the Malinga fight. And after Joe Calzaghe, my old man come up to me in the changing room, never forget it, and he went, "You're finished, son, you are." He says, "You should retire." I was in tears. Obviously my dad telling me. And I knew he was right. I said, "I'll give him a big hug." I said, "You're right, Dad." My brother went, "Hold on," Rich, says, "You've got to think about things now." Because I just give Calzaghe a good scrap. Even Joe himself afterwards says he's bloody really tricky, the Woodhall was, and he gave me a good fight. But I wasn't the same. He stopped me in the 10th round. He's a great fighter, Calzaghe. But my dad knew, he could see. He says, "You've finished, you are." And you know what? I retired after Calzaghe. I tried to come back, I had some injury, but nah. And I knew I was finished, and I retired, and he was my last ever fight. And I don't really have any regrets about that, because I got offered a lot of money to come back. But nah, I had to leave then. I'd lost 3 fights. There were 3 world title fights. I'd won 26. I'd become a world champion. I should be happy with that. I'd been in the Olympics. Your career's over before you know it. It's incredible how at 30 years of age I was world champion, and at 33 years of age you're finished, man. It's incredible. It's a journey that's not going to last. It ends. You never think it's going to end. You think you're going to fight on forever and ever as a fighter. You do. But at 33, just 33, then I retired. And like I said, you are tempted to come back. But again, I was very lucky in that I went into the media. BBC called me straight away. Started working for the BBC on some boxing fights and that. But you're always looking at fighters thinking, I could beat him. And I know why fighters come back. Because, Stephen, I've been boxing all my life. It's all I've ever known. Boxing's been my life. And I say to boxers now, go and learn another trade. Because this will end one day. Hopefully, you'll be very, very rich. Hopefully you'll have won the title and you're a wealthy person and you can set yourself up. But if you don't become a wealthy person and you don't win the title, you've got to fall back on something. And I put all my eggs in one basket. Thankfully, but I don't advise boxers like that. I say, study something else, become good at something else. Where if this doesn't work out, you can just come back onto that. It's very, very important, that is, because at 33 years of age, I was retired from boxing. No qualifications, all I knew was boxing. If people said to me, "Well, what else can you do?" I'd go, I was a landscape gardener at one time, I can do a bit of that, but at 33 years of age with no qualifications, no one's going to employ me as a landscape gardener. I ain't got the experience. So you've got to study something else.
I was speaking to Anton about this, even Kieran Richardson, another footballer.
Footballer,
and
played for West Brom, my team one time.
And They both said the same thing, more so Anton, that I think the FA, when he was, a few years ago, wasn't doing enough to educate footballers about when they got their money or signing contracts, exactly how to kind of handle it from a mindset point of view, but also like get yourself financially educated. And he wants to give back now to football, and that's the kind of role he wants to play. And I look at some boxers. One strikes me all the time. I think he's a very, very, very skillful boxer, like kind of natural ability, powerful for his weight, could be better than he is. He also was world champion multiple times, Adrian Broner.
Yeah, Broner.
And sometimes when I look him up, and his net worth of 25 million, but he's got all the hallmarks, in my opinion, and it's just my opinion, of someone who's going to make a lot of money and lose every single penny of it. Yeah. And what I try and tell my sales guys, who part of our marketing company, as they're moving up and making money, going off of what you said, when you hit a goal, world title, or certain big month, or you buy your first house or anything else, you need that next goal to keep you hungry. Yeah. But also you need to know where to preserve your money rather than spend your money. Yeah. So with my business, it's only in the last 5 years I've got kind of a bit more mature, rather than going off and buying a flash car or something like that. Put it in property, because if the business falls away, or if your craft falls away, or your boxing or football career comes to an end, you're still making money from your successes 10, 15, 20 years ago. And that's building real wealth. Yeah. How important do you think it is for any athlete, anybody, to get financially educated and have them ongoing goals?
I think they have to be educated in that way. I think you're spot on, because the thing with boxers, you see, and with sports men and women, they go, sometimes, you listen to Mike Tyson, the way he speaks about it, he says he went from having nothing, he says, to being a multi-millionaire.
400 million, and then down to nothing again. And now he's building himself back up.
And I've spoken to Mike Tyson several times, and he told me a great story once about he was driving in New York, I think it was in New York, in his Rolls Royce. Do you know this story? He's driving his Rolls Royce, and the Rolls Royce breaks down. And he literally said, Richie, because I interviewed him a couple of times at some dinners actually, and he says, I had no regard for money whatsoever. He said, I'm driving this car, he says, and it's meant to be the best car in the world. It's a Rolls Royce. He says, and it breaks down. He says, I'm in Fifth Avenue or whatever it was. He says, and it comes to a halt. He says, no, I get out. He says, and obviously the police are literally there within minutes. Mike Tyson said to me, he said, oh, what? He said, I was that disgusted with the car. He said to the police guy, he says, yeah, he said, I'm sick of it. He says, you can have it. He says, give him the keys. I think they got it back in the end, his lawyer actually. He said, but I had no regard for money then, he says, you see. So there I had this Rolls Royce, it says it broke down. He says, so I said to the guy, this policeman, here, have the keys. He says, you can have it. So I walked off. He said, my lawyer's got it back. He said, but that's an example. He said, I had no regard for money. I think it's a great point in that you all of a sudden you are earning big money as a sportsman, and you have to be educated. And boxers now come to me all the time and say, Rich, what advice can you give me financially? And I say exactly the same. Don't listen to anyone in terms of people will come out. When you got big money, people come out the woodwork from everywhere, mate, and they all want a piece of it in some snidey way. I say, all you should, you know what I mean? All you've got to do with your money, I says, is put it into property. Just put it into property. And if, and if there's a crash where everyone else's property comes down, I said, so you can't lose in property.
As long as you're renting it, that's all that matters.
Bricks and mortar. So that's the only advice I can give you. I was badly advised, actually, with a couple of things to do with shares in companies where it was too good to be true, and I wasn't very well educated myself, and it was my fault. I sort of blame the person for getting me to do it, but it's me who handed over the money for the share. I took it, and you got to take the hit. I lost a few quid here and there, thinking I was going to earn, and for a short time I was earning some good money, but then all of a sudden the shares went down, they sat in the oven, and then you start to panic, and then I got rid of them, and I lost a few quid. But I would say to anyone, it's bricks and mortar, definitely. You're quite right, you have to get educated when you're going from nothing then to earning big money. And that's one of the major problems in boxers, because a lot of boxers aren't that well educated. I'm not a very well educated person, okay? And a lot of boxers are probably not as well educated as I am. But then all of a sudden they're earning lots and lots of money. And Broner's probably a good example because as a fighter, he's been a terrific fighter, Adrian Broner. But Floyd Mayweather is another one who's apparently, I mean, I don't know whether it's true or not, but he's not got the money that they reckon he's earned.
I feel like Adrian Broner's trying to mimic himself from Floyd Mayweather, but the big difference is, I think Floyd, even though he had the persona of Money Mayweather, I believe he still treated boxing as number one, whereas Adrian Broner kind of half treats boxing seriously, but half treats the other parts of his life.
But you say, we've just talked about a person in terms of Mike Tyson. They should be looking at Mike Tyson as the ultimate example of someone who had so much money, it was incredible, down to being bankrupt. Was he bankrupt? And then exactly. So, you know, if it can happen to Mike Tyson, it certainly can happen to Adrian Broner. But yeah, I think, but then, how do you educate people like that? Do you set up something with the British Boxing Board of Control, with the WBC, the IBF, WBO, WBA? Do you set up something with them? I don't know who's going to fund that, but there should be an education package somewhere that educates boxers in terms of money. I think that would be a good idea for me.
I think these dialogues and these conversations are definitely key, because unfortunately, if you had some sort of regulation or some kind of board, they just see it as a higher power and they just want to naturally push it away. I think if it's just two normal people having a dialogue over it, talking about certain stories, people can relate to it a lot more.
Well, there's so many examples, isn't there? Especially, you know, you think of the American heavyweights in the 70s and 80s, fighters who have been world champions and ended up with absolutely nothing. You know, have been really good fighters, and again, I've met him several times at dinners and got a good conversations with him. You speak to Tim Witherspoon, mate, and obviously he will tell you a story or two on this subject. I'd really highly recommend that. Speak to Tim Witherspoon. But there's so many fighters like Tim Witherspoon who have been world champion and then they end up with not the money that they should have ended up with.
So I've only got about 10 minutes left before we've got to shoot off. So I just want to quickly talk about here quickly. So we just saw a box in the background, you're just training. So what is your, because I know you were a commentator on the Olympics. I know you've had 2 rounds of that. What's your role kind of today here?
My role here, I'm a consultant coach, so I help coach the team, the squad. I'm only here 2 days a week. That's probably down to me, because I've got other things as well. Like, I'm mainly working for BT Sport at the moment. I'm contracted with BT Sport, but they're very kind to me in that they allow me to work for Channel 5, the BBC and ITV. Obviously, they don't want me to work for Sky because that's their main rival. So I'm contracted to BT Sport, but it's a contract that does allow me to do other stuff for other companies. I'm their pundit, in-house pundit. I've got a good relationship with Stevie Bunce. Bunce is a good lad.
For Box Nation.
For Box Nation. But with Steve, he's with BT Sport now as well. So we're sort of the 2 in-house pundit guests from all the shows. Barry Jones is the co-con with John Rawlins. So we've got a great team at BT Sport, I think. I really enjoy that. But yeah, my work here still keeps me in the loop with boxers. I like working with boxers. I was working earlier with a couple of boxers developing a fast jab. Yeah, it's still sort of my passion is producing good boxers, and I want people to box the way sometimes how I boxed, but other times you have to work to their strengths. If it's a shorter guy who's a better hooking boxer, then I'll obviously work in that area as well. So yeah, I enjoy my work here at GB. I'm working with the best boxers in the country, helping them prepare obviously for Olympic Games and whatever. It's fantastic, man.
Good, you're giving back all the time. And the other thing I want to talk to you about, just briefly, is now your passion project, which is the acting. So you've been in Snatch, which was during your boxing career, but now you're kind of treating it a bit more seriously. So what are you getting up to now?
I've just been in a film called Making Friends as the World Ends. It's based in Birmingham. It's appeared in a few film festivals. I've won 1 Best Actor award, so I'm doing okay. I'm learning. It was directed and written by a fellow called John Pegg from Birmingham. So yeah, I'm doing it quite local. I've just been in another one called Sea View, which is in post-production at the moment. They're hoping to get Netflix deals, and I know the one's on Amazon Prime. So yeah, acting is very similar to boxing. Again, it's controlling emotions. You got to perform. It's being relaxed. It's very, very similar. I absolutely love it. I'm probably more dedicated to some of the scripts that I get. I try to learn everyone's lines as well as myself. I read a great thing about Sir Anthony Hopkins, who's one of my favourite actors. I think he's fantastic, and I read about him that when he's in a film, he reads the film script on average 250 times.
Jesus.
That's what he'll read. He'll read the script 250 times. So he knows everyone else's lines, but he knows every relationship in the film of what every character is. Man, that's being thorough. So I'm not quite up to that standard, but I am quite thorough, and the scripts that I've had, then I'll try and read them. And it fascinates me that the acting techniques and that, man, it's fantastic. But, you know, I'm 51 years of age. I think you need a bit of luck. You need someone to say out there, yeah, you know what, let's give him a go. You know, and then hopefully that will happen. You know, my daughter is actually, she went to acting school for 3 years, so it's a difficult industry. You need a bit of luck. You need a bit of talent as well, of course you do, but I'm learning, and I'm hoping to take it further.
Yeah, I think boxing, business, life itself, acting, bit of talent, a lot of hard work, exposure, producing content, and then you're going to have that lucky break eventually.
Lucky break on Peaky Blinders.
That's it. When I leave my podcast, Richie, I have my catchphrase, which is be happy, never content. The reason why I come up with that is because I've got my own version basically of it. Yeah. I always ask my guests, if I were to say to you, be happy, never content, what is your interpretation of that?
Be happy, never content. I think my interpretation of that as a person is to be happy in life, but not to be not satisfied. What's the word then? I am satisfied in my life and I am happy, but I think you've got to keep striving forward. So probably my interpretation is yes, always push yourself, which I'm trying to do. I'm trying to push myself now in the acting game. I want to learn. I think when one chapter in your life ends, which in boxing probably to a certain degree a chapter has ended in being a world champion, but now another chapter begins. Hopefully that will develop as being an actor. So be happy but never content, keep pushing yourself. That's my interpretation of that.
Good stuff. Thank you very much for coming on board, mate.
It's been a pleasure.
Really appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing your movies. And maybe one day I get to train in here, maybe.
Yeah, listen, I'll take you on the pads. Who knows?
I've got my my fight happening for. Funny enough, there's a picture of Alan Minter, ex-world champion.
Good fighter.
His son I know very well, Ross Minter. I'm fighting on the Queensberry League on the 26th of October, and let's see where it takes me. Yeah, well, listen, just remember, hold the centre of the ring. Always use your lead hand more than your backhand. Concentrate on your lead hand. Go for points every time, and if something else happens as regards to being a bonus, catching with the big right hand, always lead with your left hand for if you're obviously an orthodox fighter. Nice one. Thank you very much. Wicked.